Today we are going to do Objective 14. We are going to solve quadratic equations by graphing. We're actually going to learn 4 different ways to solve quadratic equations. The first way is by graphing, then we're going to solve by factoring, we're also going to solve by using the quadratic formula, and we're also going to learn completing the square as well. Everybody says, well, if it all does the same thing, why do we need to know 5 different ways to do it? Because you cannot solve every single question by graphing. Okay, graphing is a very easy method. We're going to do it all in our calculator, so I hope you have your calculators open and ready. But it's not, you're not going to be able to solve every single problem by graphing. So if you try to solve it by graphing and you get into it and you realize you can't do it that way, then you might have to choose one of the other methods. So let's talk about what a quadratic equation looks like. A quadratic equation looks like ax squared plus bx equals c, where a cannot be 0. So a, b, and c are going to be coefficients or constants if it's a c. They're going to be numbers. So if I plugged in numbers for a, b, and c, a quadratic equation might look like 3x squared plus 5x equals -7. Okay, that is an example of a quadratic equation. And the reason why it makes it quadratic is because of the x squared. If the highest degree is 2, it is called a quadratic equation. Okay. The other equations, we were solving before, like if you have 3x plus 5 equals 7, that is a linear. So this one is a linear equation because x is to the first power. Okay, the highest one you see, the highest degree you see is a 1 or an exponent of 1. Here, the exponent is 2. That's what makes it quadratic. So then you put in this little stipulation here that a cannot be 0. A is the coefficient in front of the x squared. Well, if we had a 0x squared, if I changed this to a 0, what would happen to the x squared? It would cancel out because 0 times anything would be just 0. And then my question is, would it then, if all you had left was 5x equals -7, would it still be quadratic? No, it would then be linear. So basically, you have to have the x squared, and the number in front of the x squared can be anything except for 0, because if it's 0, then it takes away the x squared, and then it's not quadratic anymore. Okay? So I'm going to take this out of presentation mode, and I'm going to open up my calculator. All right, so I want to talk about first 3 possible solutions. So when you graph in your calculator, or when you graph by hand, either way, when you graph a quadratic equation, it's going to look like a U or an N. And we call this a parabola. Okay, we call this a parabola. So when you look at it, and you can just draw these on your paper like so, you don't have to draw all the grids. So the first one we graph might look like this. And the question is, I want to know, where are the solutions? Where are the answers? And I want you to repeat after me. Even if you're watching the video, I want you to repeat after me. Anytime I ask you a question in the next 3 to 4 minutes, I want you to say where it crosses the x-axis. So let's try it. Okay. Where are the solutions? And you say where it crosses the x-axis. So if I'm going to pinpoint a solution, I could get a marker here. There we go. I have an answer here and an answer there, solution. And so there would be 2 solutions. Okay. It might look like this. And everybody says, Ms. Corns, there's no solutions. It's not crossing the x-axis. But is it touching the x-axis? Yes. And we would say it's touching at its maximum point here. We call this the vertex. And so in this case, if it crosses right at the vertex, there would only be one solution. And then finally, it might look something like this. So where are the solutions? The solutions are where it crosses the x-axis. So my question is, where is this third one crossing the x-axis? It's not. It's crossing the y-axis. It's not crossing the x-axis. So we would say this has no, and I'm going to add on here, real solution. So for graphing is great if you're looking for real answers. If it's not crossing, there's no real solution. So if there's no real solution, what kind of solutions are there? There are going to be imaginary solutions, and you're going to have to use a different method to find the imaginaries, okay? We'll either be using quadratic formula or we'll be using completing the square to find the imaginaries. So really, today's lesson, I'm going to let you leave it as no real solution, okay, until I show you how to find the imaginaries. So no real solution. So there are different ways to ask for a solution. So I might give you a quadratic equation and I might say, solve. What does that mean? Where it crosses the x-axis. Okay. I might say, find the x-intercepts. What are x-intercepts? Where it crosses the x-axis. I might say, find the zeros. What are zeros? Where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, and that's what our calculator is going to use today. It's going to say, find the zeros. And then there's another way. When I teach you how to complete the square, you will actually end up taking the square root. So when I say find the roots, that means where it crosses the x-axis. All of the above mean the same thing. And you need to be able to recognize it, because I guarantee you on the SOL, one question will say solve, and then the next question will say find the x-intercepts, and then the next question will say find the zeros, and the next question will say what are the roots. And you need to be able to say that all means the same thing, and it means where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so let me erase this real quick. Oops. Okay, so let's get into our first one in using the calculator. And before we do anything, and you're not going to need graph paper because we're going to do this all in the calculator, but I'm just going to show you. It's going to look something like this. And you might want to draw this just as a guide so you'll know which way to go. So once we graph it, we know that this one has how many solutions? This one has 2 solutions. So here's one and here's the other. So if I go to this very first one, if I go to this first one over here on the left, the calculator is going to give you some instructions. It's going to first say go left bound. Okay, so if you were bound in a sort of direction, that means you were heading in that direction. So if I was on this point right here and I was heading to the left, my question is, and I imagine my parabola like a train track. So you're going to have to stay on the track. If I wanted to go to the left, would I go above, like up here, or would I go below? Which way's to the left? So if I travel to the left is in this direction. So if I want to stay on the parabola, I would go above. So left is going to be above. You're going to hit enter, and then the calculator is going to tell you to go to the right. The right is going to be below. If I'm going to the right of this point, I'm going to go below. And everybody says, Ms. Corns, how far above? How far below? A little bit's fine, as long as you are above the point if it says left bound and below the point if it says right bound. Okay? Then I'm going to have to find this other solution. So I'm going to start all over again. I'm going to go tell it to get my zeros, because what's a zero? Where it crosses the x-axis. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use a 0 in my calculator. And it's going to say left bound. Where would the left of this point be? is going to be below. You got to stay on the parabola. And then to the right is going to be above. Okay, so you might want to draw that so that you can understand your left and your right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to pop open the calculator, and I'm going to first try to put this in my calculator. So I'm going to go to y equals. Now, normally we can put an equation in the calculator if it says y equals this. You can put it into y equals in your calculator. But I don't see a y equal. So I want to ask you a question. If I go back to these points right here, and I'm on the x-axis, what's the y-coordinate on the x-axis? How far up or how far down am I on the y-axis? I'm at 0. So here's what I want you to understand. 0 is y. I'm looking for x when y is 0. Repeat after me. I'm looking for x when y is 0. So if I'm at 0 on the y-axis, if I'm at 0, I will be located somewhere on the x-axis. Okay? So you do have y equals. So we can put that right into our calculator. X squared minus 8x minus 48. So let's go back to our graphing calculator and let's put up x squared minus 8x minus 48. I'm going to hit graph. Oops, my graph's doing something weird. I'm going to tell you right now. If your graph is doing something weird, here's a really easy, quick fix. If you look up in the top where these gray buttons are, and you see y equals, you see window, and you see zoom right beside of it, then you see trace and graph, go to zoom, and I'm going to go zoom 6. Zoom standard will take your calculator back to normal. Okay? So, I don't see a parabola. Shouldn't I see a parabola? Shouldn't I see like a U, like I see two lines where it's a U or an N, where it goes down and comes back up? So what do you think I need to do to see the entire parabola? I probably need to zoom out. I'm only seeing a portion of it, so I want to make my screen bigger. I'm going to zoom it out. So, and you'll have to press enter twice. So you're going to hit zoom out, and then you'll have to hit enter, enter to make it zoom out. So now I can see my 2 points. You don't need to be able to see the vertex, the bottom point. So as long as I can see where it's crossing the x-axis, I'm good to go. So here's what do we do to go find those 2 answers. So I'm going to hit second, the blue button, and then I'm going to go up to trace, which is right beside of the graph button. And I'm actually hitting second, and then the blue is calc. Second calc. Okay. Then I'm going to go down to 0. What's a 0? Where it crosses the x-axis. Okay. What's a 0? Where it crosses the x-axis. So second calc, choice number 2, 0. Then you're going to use your left and right buttons. Okay. Your left button, you're just going to start hitting it. The gray buttons out here where you see up, down, right, left. Okay. And you're going to see what I call a spider pig. Okay. He's fat like a pig and he's got legs like a spider, so I call him a spider pig. If you want to give him a name, we did this in 8th grade, by the way, for those that had me in Algebra 1. Normally we gave the spider pig a name like Bob or something. So if I'm going to go left bound, because that's what it says to do, left bound of this point is going to be above it. So as long as I am above the x-axis, I am okay. So I'm going to click enter. Then right bound, I need to use my right button and go below it. Okay. I will tell you, if you're using your up and down arrows, you're going to not be on the parabola. So make sure you're using your left and right arrows on your calculator. So everybody says, how far below, Miss Corns? Well, as long as you're below it, you're okay. So click enter. And the calculator says, do you want to take a guess? So we're going to click enter again. And it gives us our answers. X is -4 when y is 0. And we don't care about the y. We know y is 0. Okay? I want the x. X is -4 when y is 0. So there's one answer. So now we need to go find the other point. So you have to start all over. Second, calc 0. Hit enter. Now, you're going to have to use your right arrow and go all the way down the parabola and keep hitting it and come all the way back up the parabola. And you'll eventually see them. Okay? Where would left bound of that point be? To the left side is going to be below it. So I want to make sure that I'm below the x-axis. And I'm going to click enter. Right bound is going to be above it. So I'm going to travel above it. And I'm going to click enter again. And then I'm going to go ahead and tell it to take a guess. And I'm going to click 12. So there's my two answers, -4 and 12. The question is, how do you write those answers? So you can write it x equals -4 and x equals 12. That's one way. You can write it in a set and say -4 and 12 in a set. They're both x's, and that's okay. Could you write it as a point? Could you say -4, 12? And that is a big, fat no, because that would imply one's x and one's y. And that's not true. They're both x's. So if you're going to write it as a point, you'd have to say the x is -4, 0. That means you go left 4 and up or down 0 and hit a point. And then you'd have to say 12, 0. So that you go to the right 12 and up or down 0 and put a point. So those are your options. I will tell you that this option with the set, I know you don't like drawing those squigglies, but that's the most popular option. Okay? And the only way you're going to get better is to practice drawing them. So let's look at another one. Okay, so if I go to my calculator and I go to y equals, and I do have y equals. Do I have 0? Y is 0. So I've got y equals. So I'm going to put in x squared plus x minus 12. I'm going to hit graph. Ooh, my parabola looks kind of funny. So do you remember we zoomed in on number 1? So maybe I need to try to zoom. I'm just going to zoom standard. Zoom 6. Zoom 6 always takes it back to normal. So that looks a little bit better. Now my question to you is, do you see, can you tell me your answers? Like, can you see what that is and what that is? This is crossing at -1, -2, -3, -4, and 1, 2, 3, +3. So we know that the answer is -4 and +3. Okay? But I do want to take you through the steps in the calculator so that you can practice doing the left bound and the right bound. So let me erase that. So what are we going to hit? We're going to hit second, calc, 0. Left bound, use your left button and take it all the way up the parabola. Left is going to be above it. Click enter. Right, it's going to be down below it. Click enter. And click enter again and tell it to take a guess. So x is -4. And that's what we got just like 2 seconds ago. Okay. Everybody says, well, why do we have to learn this if I can see it? When are you going to need to use the calculator? You're going to need to use the calculator when it's like in between, when it's like a decimal and you can't really tell where it's crossing. So that's why you need to be good at this. But if you can see that it's crossing at -4, then you know the answer is -4. Okay? I need to go get the other answer. So I'm going to go second, calc, 0. Left bound is going to be of this point over here. There's the point. Left bound, you need to be below that because that's on the left side of it. Okay? Click enter. right bound, click enter, and click enter again. And so x is equal to 3. Any questions? Okay. So, what's different about this one? Can you put this into y equals? Do you have a 0? No. So what do I do so I get a 0, something equal to 0? So basically what I need to do is I need to take this 88 and move him over. And when he comes over, he becomes a negative 88. Now you have it in y equals. So here's what I'd like for you to do. I want you to hit pause. See if you can get it into your calculator and see if you can find your zeros. Okay, so if you're back with me, I've put it in. I'm going to do second calc 0. I'm going to use my left button. I always work left to right, so I always go find the one on the left side and then I find the one on the right side. And everybody says, you know, at this point in time, some people are like, Miss Corns, I can't find my spider pig. I don't know where he is. I'm going to tell you, if you will pay attention to your y coordinate right there on your calculator, I'm working to get that towards what number? We want y to be equal to 0. So if you look, negative 47, negative 43, negative 39, I'm getting closer to 0. And if you keep coming, he'll get there. If you're traveling away from 0, then you know you're going in the wrong direction. So pay attention to that right there. Okay? So left bound is going to be above. So click enter. Right bound is going to be below. And click enter again. So you get negative 5.5. Then we're going to try to find the other one. Second calc 0. Left bound, I'm going to go all the way down. And again, everybody says, Miss Corns, I can't find my spider pig. I don't know where I'm at. Like I'm at negative 85. Well, that means on my y-axis, I'm down 85. So if you pay attention to it, it's going to start getting closer to 0. So you can see that I'm working my way back towards 0. And if you keep hitting your right arrow, it'll eventually come up. And there he is. So where's left bound? Left bound of this point would be on the left side. That would be below. Right bound is going to be above. Click enter. And you get 8. So we know the answer to this one. I'm going to write it in a set. Is negative 5.5, comma 8. And these are both x's. Again, we know y is equal to 0, so we're not really focused on that at this point in time. Okay? So try this one on your own. Hit the pause button. And I'm going to get it in the calculator. First thing I'm going to do is move that negative 36 over. And when he comes over, this is going to become x squared minus 12x plus 36. When that 36 moves over, he becomes a positive. And I'm going to hit graph. Now this has purpose. How many answers does this one have? And everybody says, no solution, Miss Corns, no solution. He has a solution. It looks to me like it's a one solution problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to do second calc 0. And I'm going to use my arrow, again, working to get my y towards 0. So here's my point. My question is, where would the left side of that point be? This one actually makes sense to me. Instead of being above and below, left is going to be on the left side. Click enter. Right is going to be on the right side. Click enter. So mine gave me 5.999999. Some of yours might be saying 6.000000. Anytime it doesn't one solution answer. And I don't know why the calculator does this, but it gives you a 0.99999 or a 0.00000. Just round it. What's our answer? Where is it crossing? It's crossing at 6. So this one only has one answer, and it's crossing at 6. Okay? Last one. Let's put it in. Let's see what we think. X squared plus 3. See if you can find your zeros. I'll give you a second to stew on it. So I would be careful. Make sure you're paying attention. Our solutions are where it crosses the x-axis. Where is this crossing the x-axis? It's not. So what is the answer? No real solution. Okay, and I'm going to tell you right now, in a couple days, that's not going to be good enough. You actually will have to find the imaginary solutions. But for today, you can just leave it as you know that there are no real solutions. There's going to be imaginary solutions. Okay? All right, I'm finished.